All right, so today we're going deep into the world of Godzilla.
Ooh, fun.
Yeah, you sent over like a whole bunch of articles and research, so
Oh, yeah, yeah.
it seems like you're
Definitely a popular one.
really fascinated by the King of the Monsters.
We can.
And while you might know Godzilla, from the recent big blockbuster films,
Right.
or even, that old Hanna-Barbera cartoon,
Yeah, yeah.
we're going to go back to the creature's roots.
Okay.
We're going back to the 1954 original.
To the OG. That started it all.
Yeah, that original Godzilla film. It's a lot more than just guys in rubber suits stomping on like miniature cities.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a film that's steeped in very real and very raw anxieties.
Yeah.
Reflecting a specific moment in history
Mhm.
and posing some seriously thought-provoking questions.
It's always interesting to me that Godzilla was born in Japan,
Oh, yeah.
a country that has a uniquely tragic relationship
Right.
with the power of the atom. It's impossible.
Yeah.
You can't ignore the shadow of Hiroshima and Nagasaki when you're talking about Godzilla.
Right.
The film was made less than a decade after those events.
Yeah.
And the trauma was still very fresh
Yeah.
in the minds of the Japanese people.
And then on top of that, you have the Lucky Dragon 5 incident
Oh, yeah.
in 1954.
Mm-hmm.
A Japanese fishing boat was contaminated by fallout from U.S. nuclear testing, and it really brought the fear of radiation home.
The incident sparked widespread panic in Japan.
Oh, wow.
People were terrified of contaminated food,
Yeah.
of the long-term health effects of
Uh,
this like invisible threat of radiation.
yeah.
And you can really see that fear reflected in the film itself.
Right.
Almost as if Godzilla is like the physical embodiment of
Yeah.
those anxieties.
So we've got this historical backdrop of atomic bombings
Yeah.
and nuclear testing.
Hmm.
But how does that actually play out within the film itself? Does it just stay on this surface level of like big monster equals big bomb?
Moves it all.
Yeah.
The film's creators, particularly director Ishiro Honda,
Okay.
were very deliberate in how they used Godzilla
Right.
to explore these deeper themes of human fallibility
Mm-hmm.
and the consequences of scientific progress.
Okay, so let's unpack that a bit.
Okay.
What are some specific examples
Sure.
of how those anxieties manifest within the film itself?
Well, for starters, Godzilla isn't just some mindless beast. That's just wreaking havoc.
Right.
It's a creature that is explicitly awakened
Mm-hmm.
and mutated by nuclear testing.
Yeah.
The film directly links its destructive power to the atom,
Right.
making it like a very literal symbol of the
Yeah.
atomic age's anxieties.
And there's that haunting glow,
Yes.
that radioactive breath.
Right.
You really get the sense that Godzilla is this
Mhm.
unstoppable force of nature,
Right.
like a walking nuclear bomb.
And the way Godzilla lays waste to Tokyo, it's not just like random destruction.
Okay.
The film's special effects team meticulously recreated the devastation of Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Wow.
The crumbling buildings,
Yeah.
the fires raging out of control, the fleeing crowds. It would have been incredibly visceral
Yeah.
for audiences at the time,
Right.
like a stark reminder
Oh, yeah.
of the very real horrors they had experienced.
It's not just about the spectacle, though, is it?
Yeah.
The film really delves into the
Right.
human cost of this destruction, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Right.
You see the overcrowded hospitals. You see the doctors struggling to treat the injured. You see the families torn apart by the chaos.
Oh, wow.
And there's that incredibly poignant scene
Yeah.
with the mother and her children huddled together,
Oh, God.
knowing that Godzilla is approaching. And there's nothing they can do to escape.
Oh, man.
It's a gut-wrenching reminder of the human toll of this destructive power.
It seems like the film is really trying to make a statement
Yeah.
about the consequences of unleashing such a force,
Yeah.
whether it's a literal atomic bomb or
Mhm.
something like Godzilla. This unintended consequence of our meddling with forces we don't fully understand.
Exactly. And that brings us to one of the most fascinating and complex characters in the film,
Oh,
Dr.
yeah.
Serizawa.
Okay.
He's the scientist who creates the oxygen destroyer,
Right.
this weapon that could potentially kill Godzilla.
But it's not a simple solution, right? There's a
Correct.
huge moral dilemma
Right.
surrounding the use of this weapon.
Serizawa is deeply conflicted. He knows his creation could save lives,
Yeah.
but he's also terrified of unleashing such a powerful
Yeah.
and potentially dangerous force upon the world.
Right.
It really makes you think about the burden
Yeah.
of scientific discovery and the responsibility that comes with it.
That's a really interesting point.
Right.
Especially when you compare Serizawa
Yeah.
to someone like J. Robert Oppenheimer, the father of the atomic bomb.
Right.
Both men were brilliant scientists
Huh.
who created weapons of unimaginable power,
Right.
and both wrestled with the moral implications of their actions.
It's a theme that resonates even more strongly today, wouldn't you say?
Oh, for sure.
We're living in a world with increasingly powerful technologies,
Yeah.
from artificial intelligence to gene editing.
Right.
And with those advancements comes a responsibility to consider the potential consequences, both intended and unintended.
So Serizawa represents this internal conflict,
That's
the
nice.
scientist grappling with the destructive potential of
Yeah.
his own creation.
Yeah.
But how does the film ultimately resolve that conflict?
That's where things get even more interesting.
Oh.
And to understand that, we need to dive into the film's ending,
Okay.
which is far from your typical Hollywood happy ending.
All right, let's do it.
So you might be surprised to learn that even though Godzilla is defeated, there's no real sense of triumph in the film's ending.
Yeah, it always struck me as if a very somber ending,
Right.
especially for a monster movie.
Exactly. There's this lingering feeling of unease, this sense that, like, the danger isn't truly gone.
Right.
Dr. Yaman, the paleontologist who's been studying Godzilla, delivers this chilling warning.
Okay.
He says that as long as humanity continues to develop destructive weapons, another Godzilla could appear.
It's almost like the film is saying that Godzilla is just a symptom of a much larger problem, our own capacity for self-destruction.
That's a great way to put it. It's not just about defeating the monster in front of us.
Right.
It's about confronting, like, the destructive forces within ourselves,
Yeah.
the forces that led to the creation of such weapons in the first place.
So Serizawa chooses to use the oxygen destroyer,
Right.
sacrificing himself to kill Godzilla and prevent further destruction.
Yes.
But even in that act of heroism, there's a sense of tragedy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Serizawa destroys all of his research, ensuring that the oxygen destroyer can never be used again.
Wow.
It's a powerful statement about the immense cost of wielding such power, both personally and on a global scale.
It's almost like he's saying that some knowledge is simply too dangerous for humanity to possess, even if it's in the name of good intentions.
And that ties back to the film's overall message about the consequences of unchecked scientific progress, like a cautionary tale about the need for responsibility, for ethical considerations, and for understanding the potential ramifications of our actions.
Thinking about those themes of scientific responsibility and unintended consequences, it's amazing how relevant they still are today.
Oh, totally.
Are constantly grappling with new technologies and their potential impact on society.
It's true. Godzilla serves as a timeless reminder that progress isn't always linear.
Right.
That sometimes our greatest advancements can also lead to our greatest threats.
Some might argue that later Godzilla films, while entertaining, lost some of that depth, that they became more about spectacle than substance.
Okay.
What's your take on that?
That's an interesting point. It's true that the franchise went through a lot of transformations over the years, embracing everything from campy humor to environmental themes. But even in those later films, I think there are still glimmers of that original anxiety, that fear of the unknown, that potential for humanity to unleash forces beyond its control.
It's like Godzilla became a blank slate, a canvas onto which different generations could project their own fears and anxieties.
And as we move into the discussion about the franchise's evolution,
Okay.
that idea of Godzilla as a reflection of our changing anxieties is a great framework to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Because while no sequel quite captured the bleakness of the original,
Right.
the series continued to explore those deeper themes in different ways.
Okay, so let's talk about Godzilla's legacy.
Okay.
It went from this terrifying symbol of nuclear fear to a global pop culture icon. How did that happen? It's crazy to think how Godzilla went from like this scary symbol of a nuclear fear to, you know, battling giant robots and alien invaders. It's like the franchise itself like mutated over time.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? As the immediate threat of nuclear war kind of faded from public consciousness,
Right.
the franchise started to explore other anxieties, other monsters, and even other genres.
Yeah.
You had Godzilla teaming up with other giant monsters battling environmental threats.
Right.
And even becoming a kind of protector of Earth.
Yeah, I remember watching those later films as a kid
Yeah.
And they were definitely more action-packed and fantastical.
Oh, yeah.
It was less about, like, existential dread and more about the thrill of seeing these, like, giant creatures duke it out.
Right. There was definitely a shift towards a more, like, lighthearted tone.
Yeah.
Even embracing some of the campier elements
Right.
that had always been present in the series.
Yeah.
Some might argue that it lost some of its depth.
Yeah.
That it also gained a wider audience,
Right.
appealing to younger viewers and becoming like a truly global phenomenon.
It seems like Godzilla became less of a symbol of fear and more of a symbol of entertainment.
Right.
But did the franchise ever return to those, like, darker, more introspective roots?
It did. Especially in recent years, there's been a resurgence of what you might call serious Godzilla films,
Okay.
particularly in Japan. Films like Shin Godzilla and Godzilla Minus One
Okay.
have tackled contemporary anxieties in a way that feels very much in line with the spirit of the original.
Okay, let's dig into those a bit.
Sure.
How do Shin Godzilla and Godzilla Minus One compare to the original film in terms of, like, themes and tone?
Well, Shin Godzilla, which came out in 2016, is a really interesting case study.
Okay.
It's a very direct response to the 2011 Fukushima nuclear disaster.
Wow.
The film uses Godzilla as a metaphor
Okay.
for the overwhelming power of nature
Mm-hmm.
and the failings of bureaucracy
Right.
in the face of such a crisis.
So it's still tapping into that fear of nuclear disaster, but it's
Yeah.
also reflecting a more modern anxiety about environmental catastrophe and governmental incompetence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it does so with a very bleak and satirical tone.
Wow.
There's a real sense of helplessness and frustration as the characters struggle to understand and contain
Yeah.
this unprecedented threat.
And what about Godzilla Minus One?
Yeah.
How does that fit into the picture?
Godzilla Minus One, which was just released this year, takes a slightly different approach.
Okay.
Set in post-war Japan, a country already devastated by the war,
Right.
and Godzilla's arrival just adds to the sense of despair and hopelessness.
So it's almost like Godzilla represents the final blow,
Right.
the ultimate test of resilience for a nation already on its knees.
That's a great way to put it. And like the original film, Godzilla Minus One focuses on the human cost of the disaster,
Right.
the individual stories of loss and survival
Yeah.
against overwhelming odds.
It seems like no matter how many times Godzilla is reimagined,
Yeah.
there's always that core element of fear, of anxiety, of the potential for destruction lurking beneath the surface.
And that's what makes Godzilla such an enduring and powerful figure.
Yeah, it's more than just a giant monster.
Right.
It's a reflection of ourselves, of our deepest fears, and our capacity for both creation and destruction.
So after diving deep into Godzilla's world,
Right.
from its dark origins to its evolving legacy, what can we take away from this? What does it all mean?
I think Godzilla serves as a powerful reminder of the responsibility that comes with power.
Yeah.
Whether it's the power of the atom, the power of technology, or even the power of our own choices.
It's a call to be mindful of the consequences of our actions,
Right.
both intended and unintended,
Uh-huh.
to acknowledge the potential for destruction
Yeah.
that exists within ourselves and within the world we've created.
And perhaps most importantly, it's a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming odds, in the face of seemingly unstoppable forces, there's still hope.
Yeah.
There's still the potential for resilience, for compassion, and for the human spirit to endure.
Godzilla might be a fictional monster,
Right.
but the questions it raises,
Yeah.
the anxieties it embodies,
Mhm.
those are very real.
They are.
And as we face new challenges in the 21st century, those questions seem more relevant than ever.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'll leave you with this.
Okay.
If Godzilla were to appear today, what would it represent? What anxieties or fears would it embody? That's something we're thinking about, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And on that note, we'll bring this deep dive into the world of Godzilla to a close. Thanks for joining us.